Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're looking at something really interesting, excerpts from this narrative, strange.gh5.pdf. And our mission really is to unpack these, well, seemingly everyday moments that when you see them through the narrator's eyes, they paint this truly peculiar picture of life, ambition, love. It's more than just a story. It feels like a window into a very unique way of seeing the world. Lots of surprising bits about perception and enough everyday oddities to really grab you.
Exactly. And what's great about this deep dive is it lets us get inside the head of a character who just doesn't play by the usual rules of emotion or interaction. It really makes you think critically about our own responses to things.
Okay, let's jump right in then. So the narrative sort of opens with a pretty normal day starting for our narrator. He gets a phone call from his friend Raymond. It starts off casual enough. Raymond's inviting him to his beach house near Algiers for Sunday. Says, bring your girlfriend too. But then the tone shifts, doesn't it? Raymond mentions he's being followed by some Arabs. One is the brother of this woman he used to see. And he asks the narrator, keep an eye out. Tell me if you see this guy near the building.
Yeah, and what's immediately striking is what the narrator worries about. Not Raymond's danger, really. He's thinking, oh, I should hang up because his boss doesn't like personal calls at work. It tells you something right away, doesn't it? About his detachment from, well, what most people would find alarming or important. Prioritizing a small rule over a friend's safety.
That really sets the stage, yeah.
Yeah.
That little detail. And speaking of the boss, a bit later, the narrator actually gets called into his office. He thinks he's going to get told off for the call, right? But no. Instead, the boss offers him this big career move, a transfer to Paris, live there, travel around for work. I mean, for a young person, you'd think that sounds pretty good.
Right. A huge opportunity. But this is where we really see inside the narrator's head, his response. It's incredible. He just says, yes, but that really, it was all the same to me. Just like that. And he even explains he thinks, people never change their lives and one life was as good as another. Says he's not unhappy with his current life at all. The boss, well, he's pretty stunned. Calls him unambitious, says that kind of attitude is disastrous in business.
And the narrator's own thoughts on it.
Yeah.
He genuinely doesn't see the point in changing. He reflects back, I wasn't unhappy. He mentions having ambitions as a student, but then he had to quit his studies and learned very quickly that none of it really mattered.
And that's fascinating, isn't it? This profound indifference. It's not just apathy. It seems like a core belief none of it really mattered. It really forces you, the listener, to think how much of our own ambition, our own drive is genuinely us versus just what society expects.
Okay, so the day goes on. That evening, his girlfriend Marie comes over. And this detachment, it continues. She asks him pretty directly, actually, if he wants to marry her. And his answer is just so dispassionate. He says, it didn't make any difference to me, and that we could if she wanted to.
Wow. Yeah, and that whole exchange, it really shows the weird dynamic they have. Marie asks, do you love me? And he says something like, the question didn't mean anything, but that he probably didn't love her. So she asks naturally, so why marry me then? His logic is just passive. He says, well, it didn't really matter, and if she wants to, fine. He even adds, look, she was the one who was doing the asking, and all I was saying was yes.
Unbelievable. And when Marie says, hold on, marriage is serious, his response, no. Then she pushes him, asks if he'd say yes to any woman who asked, and he just says, sure.
And Marie's reaction to all this is maybe the key. She calls him peculiar, but then she says, well, that was probably why she loved me, but that one day I might hate her for the same reason. That's quite insightful, actually. His very strangeness, his indifference is the hook for her, but maybe also the thing that could eventually push her away. It's both compelling and maybe a bit scary.
Moving on a bit, there's this part where he describes Paris to Marie, and it's so stark. Not exactly the romantic pitch you'd expect. He just says, it's dirty, lots of pigeons in dark courtyards, everybody's pale.
Yeah, that description, it just fits, doesn't it? It reinforces that very clinical and romantic way he sees things. No filter of emotion or expectation, just observation.
Then they're out walking, and Marie asks him something like, don't you want to know what I have to do? Referring to her plans. And he admits, yeah, he did want to know, but I hadn't thought to ask.
It's a small moment, but it says a lot, right? That lack of natural curiosity, even with someone he's close to, it points to this passivity that seems to run through all his interactions. He doesn't really reach out or probe, just sort of experiences what comes to him.
Okay, so later that evening, they're having dinner at Celeste's, and this strange little woman comes in. He describes her quite vividly, actually. Jerky gestures,
Mm.
uh, bright eyes, and a little face like an apple.
And her behavior is really something else. So meticulous, almost programmed. She orders everything at once, calculates the bill right then and there, pulls the exact money plus tip out of her pocket, and then through the meal, she sits there checking off radio programs in a magazine. He calls her movements robot-like.
Right. Very precise, very odd. And after she leaves, the narrator actually follows her for a short bit. He notes her speed, her incredible assurance, how she never looked around or swerved. But then, just like that, he said he forgot about her a few minutes later.
And that reaction, or lack of it, is key. He observes all these details, quite acutely, in fact. But there's no judgment, no real curiosity about why she's like that, no deeper thought. He just sees it, notes it, and moves on. It perfectly mirrors his whole way of being observant, but fundamentally detached.
So the final encounter we're looking at today involves old Salamano. The narrator finds him waiting outside his door, and the old man is really upset. His dog is lost. He's been looking everywhere, went to the police, and the police were just indifferent. Told him basically, tough luck, dogs get lost every day. They don't track that stuff.
And the contrast here is so sharp. You have Salamano absolutely consumed by grief and this deep attachment to his dog, even though it sounds like it was a difficult dog. And then you have the narrator whose response is just, well, practical to the point of being cold. He suggests Salamano just get another dog.
Yeah, it really highlights the different ways people connect, or don't.
Yeah.
Salamano then tells the story of the dog. It's quite moving, actually. He got the dog right after his wife died. He admits he wasn't exactly happy with his wife, but says he'd pretty much gotten used to her. That phrase alone. He talks about feeding the puppy with a bottle, how they just sort of age together. He calls the dog bad-tempered, but still a good dog just the same.
Hmm.
And he's so sad about its illness, calls it old age, saying there's no cure for old age.
That's a really powerful little story about companionship, isn't it? It suggests connection isn't always about, a sunshine and roses. Sometimes it's just about shared time, habit, being used to someone. Even if the relationship itself was complicated, the gap left is still real.
Definitely. And then the conversation takes a turn. Salamano brings up the narrator's mother. He calls her your poor mother and sort of assumes the narrator must be sad about her death.
And the narrator, he doesn't really respond, just stays silent, which seems to make Salamano feel awkward, because then Salamano quickly reveals this bit of neighborhood gossip that, some people in the neighborhood thought badly of me for having sent Maman to the home.
Right. And the narrator's reaction to that is also typical of him. No defensiveness, no shame. He just says, oh, I hadn't realized that people thought badly of me for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Then he gives his reasons, purely practical ones. He didn't have the money to care for her, the home seemed logical, and he adds, anyway, it had been a long time since she'd had anything to say to me, and she was bored all by herself.
I mean, it's brutally honest, isn't it? It lays bare that conflict between what society expects with, duty, grief, how you should feel about your mother, and his own reality. His reality is based on pragmatics and, frankly, a lack of emotional connection. There is no performance of grief. But what's interesting is Salamano kind of gets it on a practical level. He says, well, at least in a home you can make a few friends. It's like they find this tiny patch of common ground, even coming from such different emotional places.
A brief moment of understanding, maybe? And then Salamano leaves, but not before saying how his life has changed now the dog's gone, how he's not sure what he'll do. And that final line, I hope the dogs don't bark tonight. I always think it's mine. Just heartbreaking. So wrapping this up, this deep dive into strange-5.pdf, it's really shown us a character operating on a completely different frequency. He seems almost immune to the usual pressures of emotion, ambition, connection, all those things society tells us are important.
Absolutely. And the power of this text, I think, is how it forces us to look at our own assumptions. What is a normal reaction? What does it mean to care? When you see someone react so differently to a job offer or a marriage proposal or even death and grief, it makes you question the definitions you usually just accept.
So for you listening, what does this all mean? Maybe this narrator's peculiar perspective challenges what you hold as important. Does it make you think differently about big life choices or how you react emotionally?
Yeah, that core idea from the narrator, one life was as good as another, none of it really mattered. It's a radical thought. It begs the question, what does make a life meaningful? Or a connection real? How much are we shaped by our own internal compass versus, the maps given to us by society? Maybe the real provocative thought to leave you with is this. In a world that's always telling us how to feel and what to want, what would it really look like to live completely free of those expectations? What would that life be?